Hi everyone, so today we're going to talk about this fabulous crown that I'm wearing. We're going to be working on this crown, well, not this one, you're going to make your own, but we're going to make something similar so that you can have a crown that has a relief sculpture and added texture at the top. We're going to start off by checking out a bunch of different types of crown shapes that you can use to make your crown. So on this piece, there are some that are just not possible because they're really complicated and you're going to have to cut out on cardboard, but some of the simpler ones are going to work just fine for this. You are going to need to know how to use a hot glue gun, so we're going to talk a little bit about this in class and what's the best way to use it and stay safe. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is your piece of cardboard, and on your cardboard you're going to have two options to cut this crown out. So I'm going to do something pretty simple. I'm not going to make this one too complicated. I'm going to go with this one, just simple. Now, this is a perfectly symmetrical crown, meaning that it's the same on both sides. So you have two options to cut this out. You can either just draw straight across, maybe with a better Sharpie. Or you can take the slightly more difficult route and you can fold it, and starting from the fold, this will be the center of your crown, so then you start from the fold and draw out. Now you want to make sure that it's almost as long as this piece of paper, if not as long, otherwise your crown would be too tiny on your head. So if you're doing it like this, then you can just go ahead and cut it out this way, or if you're doing it like this, just go ahead and cut it out. This one is more difficult, but they both work just the same. Just depends on what you prefer. And there you have the beginning of your crown. Don't throw away your scraps because they're really great for decoration later. So once you've got your crown cut out, then you can kind of think about what kind of decorations you'd like. Now the cool part about this is that you can really stick anything to it. As long as it's raised, then it's going to show up when you put the tape on it to make it look like this cool metal. So I've got a bunch of sequins here, but I'm not really a fan of the sequins. I prefer to make my decorations out of my scraps. So now that I've got some simple decorations on there, I'm going to go ahead and hot glue them on. Now remember, we love our hot glue gun, but at the same time we have to be extra safe, never touching the silver tip, squeezing pretty gently. I'm going to hot glue all these pieces on. You don't need very much hot glue. And it does dry very, very fast. Okay, so now here comes for some fun hot glue decoration. I've become a really big fan of how to make these hot glue lines. On some of my other crowns, I was able to get it to do some pretty cool things. So I've been decorating with the hot glue gun a lot, and I find that that's pretty effective at getting dots and swirls and squiggles. But you can also use a pipe cleaner or fuzzy stick and sequins. I just really like how easy it is to do with the hot glue. So now that I've got the front decorated, I'm going to go ahead and give it a second to dry. Once it's dry, kind of pluck off all of these little spider webs that you get from using a hot glue gun. After that, it's time to staple the headband on. So what I do is I take these little strips and I tuck it under Grab the stapler. 2 to 3 staples works just fine. Then do the other side. Once I've got the edges stapled on, the little strips, put it around my head, measure the back, slide it off, and staple again. And this forms the armature, the inside structure of your metallic tape crown. So I've got a couple of them in progress because I kind of really like making them. So a little recap before we head on to the tape. We cut out our crown, we decorated it, we used hot glue, you may have used sequins, fuzzy sticks, really anything that you can glue down is going to work really nicely. Buttons, keys, foam letters, foam shapes, any of that is going to work just fine. I added a little extra to my headband because I just can't help myself. And now I'm ready to add the tape. Now the tape can be kind of frustrating if you cut it into little pieces and then try to peel each one individually. But we've found a way that seems to work for everybody. So this is the super cool air conditioning metallic tape that we're gonna be using. It's easier to start to peel on one side. Peel a little bit up and then just cut the silver part off. Don't cut the white part off because then when you go for your next piece, you've already got it peeled and it's a little less frustrating than having to peel each piece. So now you're going to apply the tape over the entire thing. Now I don't usually do the back, but you can if you want to. The fun part about this is trying to get it to sit into the texture by just pressing. You just want to make sure that you're rubbing the tape down into the texture that you've placed. If you have some little areas that are missing tape like here, you can always cut off the edge here and reuse it for the piece that you're missing. And then just fold anything back or fold it under if you have a little extra. You are going to want to overlap your pieces just a wee bit. So that's piece number 1. Piece number 2 then becomes a little easier because now you just have to peel it off the white. Small pieces are easier to handle than big pieces. Big pieces tend to get real crinkly real fast. Rub it in with your thumb. The more you rub it in now, later will be a little easier to find all your textures. Okay, so now that we've got it completely covered in the tape, I made sure that while I was putting on the tape, I was pressing it into the texture as I went. Kind of makes your life a little easier when you go to press it into the corners. So you can pretty much use anything for this as long as it's got kind of a blunt end. I like the end of a paintbrush or a clay tool works just fine too. So now you've got to kind of press and scratch and massage the tape into the little corners. So very carefully, I'm just kind of going around my texture. Now, if you get a hole in it, it's really not that big of a deal. You can always go back with some tape and put a little Band-Aid on it. But you'll see, as you start to press it, into the texture, the tape is gonna start stretching around the corners and all of what you put on there is going to start to pop out. So now we just start to carefully and slowly go around all the tape to try and work the texture out by pressing the tape in along the edges. Now, depending on how much texture you put on there, depends on how long this is going to take you. Okay, so now we've got it all pushed into the texture, all of our textures popping out. It looks lovely. Now we're going to kind of antique it and inlay it with some black acrylic paint. I like acrylic because it dries pretty fast and it doesn't come off. It doesn't peel like tempera would. So you just paint the whole thing black. You've got it painted pretty much completely black, which doesn't take much. Give it a second, and then you're gonna take some paper towel and you're gonna wipe almost all of it off. Now I like to leave a good amount of black on there just to help with my antiquing, and it really makes some of the texture pop. It gets down into the little creases, and that is your metallic tape crown.